Hello, everybody. My name is Paolo Acob. I am a communications graduate and I also have a psychology minor. The most recent work I did for PASA was in 2021 through 2022. I was the cultural director of acting, but I just wanted to introduce myself. I hope that you guys are all having like a really great PACC so far, and also Founders Day, which I am here to speak for you guys. And I wanted to answer some questions today by thankfully Danny and Ray today. So the first question goes to be what inspired me to create PASA News. As you guys know, that I am the founder of PASA News, which is helmed currently right now by Angel and Pawan, the historians of PASA's 52nd Corps. But why did I create PASA News? It was because when I entered to become the historian during my 2018 through 2019 year, I decided I wanted to leave a mark and somehow help the organization kind of spread information throughout the organization. I felt like I was balancing a lot, like I was doing school and also stuff like FG, PCN, Kapatid, but it was really hard for me to get all of these updates from PASA just by looking at the flyers or paying attention to our Facebook. So I wanted to make something like PASA News where it made accessibility and also got information to our PASA members in kind of like my own way, in some kind of news format, you know. It was meant to be informative, and I just really liked what I did. I was a videographer at the time. I still do videography today, but at the time I was doing it with my Ansel Coronel, and a lot of that inspiration comes from my kuya John Tolang. He was the historian before me, and it just felt like a really nice way for me to live on and continue my legacy as historian by founding PASA News. What inspired me to continue being on core after already serving as PASA's historian? Well, going into secretary, leaving the historian position, I was very much so putting in my work as a creative artist. I was making videos for PASA, I was doing public relations a bit. It was cool to document the history of our organization. But what I wanted to do was a little less of that kind of work because I wanted to focus more on my own like personal projects. And so I wanted to still continue working with the org, but also have the freedom to work on my own stuff. So I decided to become secretary because I wanted to know the inner workings of like what it was like to be behind the scenes of an organization, what it was like to lead from a student-led organization and communicate with like faculty on campus. I wanted to create opportunities like hosting an art show for PASA students, and also create opportunities for PASA general members to meet people outside of PASA. You know, I feel like one of our biggest resources in the past few years has been Triforce. So shout out to SFSU's PACE and then Akbayan at SJSU. I've made a lot of great friends there. I have a lot of counterparts. And I felt like it was just really cool for me to be in the inner workings of what an organization looked like. I also was really good at typing, so it felt like it was easy for me to be the one to take like meeting minutes. But I really still had like a lot of love for this organization, so that's why I decided to continue my years doing secretary. But my story with cultural director of acting is a little different. After COVID in 2020, exiting COVID in 2021 a bit, I was returning back to campus, and after a year and a half in isolation, a lot of questioning whether I should return or if I should just focus on school, I made the decision after talking to a lot of my good friends to run for cultural director of acting. I want to shout out Brent Balancho, Kat De Leon, Alexine Luna, Sydney Anchetta, and Ansel Coronel. These are the 5 people that I had spoken to that really inspired me to go and do this position. Shout out to Ashley Lumba as well. All of these people were people in my deciding factors towards becoming cultural director of acting. The reason why I wanted to be this position was because I had a story to tell. After being in isolation, in quarantine for about 2 years, I felt like coming back and finishing my college years in person, I felt like the new people of PACC, the new people that are coming in after these years, deserve to know the story of how we were first founded. And it was a story of love and also a story of liberation, because Randy in 1972 wanted to unite the Filipino students on campus. That was just straight from the noggin too, because I didn't really like script this, but it was like back then I just really wanted to tell his story, because it was like the 50th year. I wanted to do something special. It was like we've had stories in the past that didn't really revolve around our story here at PACC, and I felt like our story with Randy's origin of creating the organization was worth telling to new general members. I felt like it was an inspiring story. Creating this PCN 50 Sabado was kind of a dream for me. I've always thought about it ever since I got my start with PACC. In 46th PCN, I believe, I was the photographer for that one, and it was the first kind of introduction I had with like PACC and like its capabilities, like what people could do in PACC, the opportunities that are created through the organization. And it was like a long buildup, you know. I was in core for years and I felt kind of like nervous. I was like, I don't know if I have a story to tell or whatever. But coming out of a pandemic and having all of this knowledge, like what core is ran like, how do we do meetings, and other information that I had from just previous years, I felt like it was important for me to be this bridge or liaison with the older PACC and also the newer generation. That being said, that's why I decided to become Cultural Director of Acting. I also do want to shout out to my co's at the time. It was Joanne Cabinlet and Anna Sambile. I couldn't thank you guys enough. As well as my acting committee, it was Tyler Piedad, Sydney Anchetta, and Nicholas Alvarado, who is our PCN 52 director. Very proud of you, Nick. So shout out to all of the people that were in my acting and all of the people that were dancing that year. It was very fun. And yeah, that's why I decided to be in that position as well as secretary. I had a lot of love to give to this organization, as you could see. As my closing statement, I wanted to share like a very unique experience that I had on campus, and it's like my favorite PACC memory, I would say. I would say like 18 at the time. I was at the CSU East Bay Library. It wasn't the core building just yet. It was like the older library where Starbucks is. I was upstairs and they called it the upper mall back then. I was at the upper mall looking at the view, and I decided, like it's kind of hot because it was a hot summer day. Decided to move to a cubicle, and I was like, still kind of like, I don't like this cubicle, so I moved to another one. And I opened my laptop, and I saw, after like trying to like change my seating for studying, I saw a bunch of text messages from a bunch of friends. I remember it was Daisy Maction, it was John Tolang, my kuya, Kat De Leon, and I think my sib. And I got 4 text messages all saying, oh, you got nominated today for historian. This was when I just got picked up too. I was in Femme de Sol. I'm in Femme de Sol still. But I got all these text messages that I was being nominated for a historian position, and I was like, what is that? I don't know what historian is. Like, what is that? They're like, come over here at the theater. We're doing nominations right now. Come through if you want to like accept it or whatever. I don't remember which one I replied to. And I was like, okay, well, I was having a difficult time trying to study anyways. Let me close my laptop and I'm going to go and book it. So I was like walking over. I guess I was kind of speed walking, but I remember like kind of just going there at my own pace. And when I was walking there, I had my earphones in, but I took them out because I saw 2 people walking towards me. They were leaving the nominations event. It was Ansel Coronel and Daniel Romero, my sib. And I knew Daniel, but I never really met Ansel. And I've met him, kind of known him for a little bit in the organization, but we never like formally met. And then Ansel Coronel at the time just got nominated as historian as well because he was the intern. So he knew that I got nominated, but I didn't know that he did. And then when Daniel was walking towards me with Ansel, I was like, like, what's up with you guys? And then Daniel was like, they nominated you in there. And then I remember it was my first time meeting Ansel, and he was like, what's good, Co? And then I just remember feeling really like excited in that moment because I didn't know him, but he knew of me, and like we knew of each other, and I felt like I had a really exciting friendship coming from that one. And riding the high from just that like acknowledgement, I started walking towards um, the studio theater where there was nominations being held, and it was very fun. I remember like Brent Balancho, Carissa, Deji Maction, Kristen Ebrio was all there, like Martin Atienza. He's the one that nominated me for historian. But when I walked in there, like they were finishing a slide. I think they were saying like vice president, like the duties in the Constitution for vice president. And then they ended. It was Daisy being president at the time. She said, "Since you're here now, Paolo, would you like to accept, decline, or pend on your decision to become or to run for historian?" And then I remember everybody looking at me low-key with a smile, or they was just looking at me. They was like, what is he gonna say? Like, is he gonna say anything? And then I said yes. And then I just remember like everybody like kind of screaming. I was like, damn, this room was calm as hell. Like, what the hell? But it was because, like I said earlier, my first introduction to like PACC really was photographing PCN. They hired me. It was Sabrina Angeles, the cultural director at the time, along with Matt and Martin. And it was just like a really cool opportunity for me. So being that people had already known like my work, it was exciting for them to see that I was going to take a leadership position. But that's my closing statement. I just wanted to share this story because I felt like with Ansel, he's still a friend to mine to this day, that I keep up with, and we always talk. And I just feel like this story should represent as an example of what kind of like relationships could be built off of this beautiful organization. Look, I love PACC. I love all that it's brought to me. It's brought me really great friends for the past couple of years. It brought me like an amazing fam. And I'm just really thankful for all the opportunities that I was either able to create for PACC or the opportunities that PACC has created for me. So all I could say is just thank you guys. Thank you everybody that's here today at PACC and Founders Day. And if you guys ever see me on campus or if you ever see me around, don't be a stranger. Come up and say hi. I'd love to meet you. Thank you, and have a great rest of your PACC and Founders Day.
Okay. And for your last question, where do you see yourself in your later years?
Okay. So where I am right now, I guess I'll just start from where I am right now. Right now I am a special ed teacher at Palo Alto Unified School District. So next year actually, I'll be a full-fledged teacher. So the last few years I was a sub, and I just really like the idea of like educating the youth of today, and because they're going to be like the leaders of, next year, years after, you know what I mean? So I really am grateful that I'm in a position of teaching, and I guess in a few years, in 5 years or 10 years, I want to continue that route to education, and I want to further it in probably being an administration in education or build upon teaching, other organizations or workshops even. I think that would be awesome. And yeah, any other questions?
Do we have audience questions?
Audience questions?
I do have a question.
Yeah.
What is one thing that you think would have changed if you weren't part of PACC?
Ooh. That's so hard. A lot. PACC brought me a sense of identity. It also brought me a sense of family as well. Because this was honestly like my home away from home. Even though like I'm a commuter, I always looked forward to spending my time with PACC because it just brought me so much joy in my life. And yeah, it was definitely worthwhile, my time here. It brought me like myself identity, of course, like learning more about my heritage and my history. and leadership, because I feel like without it, I wouldn't be where I am today in my career as well. So educating and like doing all this stuff, it's like definitely PACC was my my start. Yeah, my beginning to like all these other great things that happened in my life already.
Y'all hear that?
Yay!
Join Core. Alright, does anyone have an audience question?
Audience question? No.
Pretty shy.
Twice. So shy. Yeah.
What's one of your favorite memories from PACC?
Ooh.
What was the
Okay.
question?
What was one of her favorite memories?
Favorite
from
memories.
PACC?
Okay.
My favorite memory in PACC was when the start of my, like literally after freshman orientation, it was like the first day of school, and I saw PACC tabling, and my friends wanted to join, and I was like, oh, I don't know about it. You know, I was already in Filipino clubs in high school. And then it really wasn't until my friend told me to apply to be like in one of the FAMs that I actually joined. So I actually joined PACC when they were pairing. And I was in the room, and then I was like, what? This is my first event, and I'm already like in a fam already? Like, you know, so that was my first event. It wasn't like it wasn't like fall open house, nothing. It was like, oh, you're in this fam now. I'm like, oh, wow. And I remember afterwards there was an event, and then they showed like this core video, and I don't know if you have core videos, but like they looked so cool, you know. They introduced all the core members, and I was like, wow, this is such a great org. It looks like they're all friends. And yeah, I really enjoyed, like, it was so welcoming, you know what I mean? And I hope you all are too, like in your open house. But that's what initially drew me in, and then and I fell in love with everything else that PACC brought. Yeah.
Okay, so I saw a hand from Sebastian. You had a question?
Yeah, I do. So like, how did you balance out being like when you first became a core member and college work as well?
Ooh, that's a good question. I really try. Of course, school is important. School is #1 priority, okay? You cannot be in PACC if you cannot, you know, if you're not in school first. So I would say like definitely balance. Have that school balance of, you know, do your studies first, study for your test first, and then like PACC as well. But like, luckily, I did a lot of my schoolwork before like, you know, planning for these events. I already had them like already in the back of my mind, like all of these like pairings and stuff like that. So you really have to like know how to balance and plan out. That's my advice. Yeah, because definitely if you're a competition director, you're gonna have a lot on your plate. Mm-hmm. So especially if I remember when I was competition director, it was my final year. So I was going to graduate, so I was on a time crunch. Yeah.
What did you like most about your role as CoPo?
Ooh, okay. My favorite time in CoPo was when I was working with Triforce. So they actually had me as a guest speaker in San Jose at Mayan. So I got to see everybody in that Mayan. It was really fun. We did workshops with them. So it was also about identity. And then back then we had PACC as, Filipino American Student Association, but we had the X. Filipinx. Yeah, so we had to explain. I had to explain why we had that. Yeah, to them. So it was really fun. That's one of my memorable experiences. Yes.
This is Nolan speaking.
Hi,
I just wanted to ask you, I guess, from your opinion, you mentioned Filipinx, right? For changing the name. So to you, what is the importance of why the name should be changed from Filipino to Filipinx?
Okay, so my stance on it is because the X actually derives from the old Filipino language, right? So like in Babayan, or in that cultural lens, right? We had people there that, do you remember like when you're learning the Filipino language, they use siya?
Yeah.
And siya is like kind of like,
Gender neutral.
it's gender neutral, right? So when we add the X to Filipinx, it's kind of putting that aspect of those people's stories in it. Because back then, we didn't have, like for people that did identify as LGBTQ, they were kind of like in the backseat, you know what I mean? They were really in those stories that we teach in Filipino American history, or in Filipino history in general, right? So it was mostly erased. So that's why we put in the X, because we want to identify those people. But yeah.
Just wanted to follow up. So when you changed the name, right, from Filipino to Filipinx, was it a simple core decision, or did you have some extra process behind changing the name?
It was a core decision, so it came up by my president, Arvin, at the time, and then he kind of like told the whole core, and then we all agreed upon it. And then it wasn't just like one core meeting, but it was also like we had to also be educated on it, because back then I didn't know what it meant. So the knowledge that I had about having the X in it, it signifies that, you know, you're also educated in what you know about Filipino history as well. So I feel like if you're ever going to do a change, maybe like talk to like all your core members and make sure that you all are on the same page about it and are educated about it. So
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Alright. Is
We're
there any
gonna
other
take
questions?
one more question.
yeah.
Going on?
Yes. Hello.
So it's currently nominations and election season. What is some words of advice or like encouragement for people who are looking to be on core, or what to expect to be on core?
Okay. I think I said this before, but I hope that during those speeches, right, or when you're like drafting your speeches, make sure that you're not just talking about you. Make sure that you're not just talking about your accomplishments or like what you've done for PACC, right? Because all those things are important as well. But the community that's going to vote for you, they want to know what you can do for PACC, for them, right? So you got to lead with your heart. You got to know like, oh, is this a position that I want for myself? Or is this a position that I actually want to lead and become like, I actually want to make a difference in? And people are not just going to see you by your accomplishments. They're going to see you on, oh, this person, I want to vote for this person because they have the heart to do it. They have the passion to actually lead a community. Because that's what matters. It's not about you, right? It's about all these other people in our organization. So I guess that's my 2 cents. If you want to join, if you want to be a core member, you have to lead by example, and you have to lead with passion and love. So, and they're gonna see that just by how you move and how you speak, and yeah. But I guess those are very.
Give it up for Kamille De Guzman, everybody!
It's like our little talk show.
So unfortunately, we did have another guest that I was going to be interviewed, but he had to leave early. So we're going to jump right into our third and final guest of the evening. He is the man who started it all way back in 1972. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Randy Sabado! Okay, so Randy, how have you been
I've been good. I want to thank you all for inviting me. Every time I come back to this campus, it brings an emotional response to me. So hopefully I can get through this without breaking up. But thank you for inviting me. I am so happy and proud of all of you.
Just to catch up, let's catch up on your life. I believe the last time that I saw you, you announced that you're now a grandfather.
Yes, I have a beautiful 6-month-old granddaughter named Catherine. She's just starting to maybe crawl a little bit. She can mumble a few things, not words yet, but I've never seen a baby who just smiles all the time. It's amazing, and I'm enjoying every minute of it.
Okay, so I got 5 questions for you, and then after that, I'm going to pass it on to the audience to see if they have questions for themselves.
Okay.
So first question is, what did you recall from the 70s to pursue PACC?
The 70s. Well, it seems like a long time ago, but in order to answer that question, you have to understand a little bit about my history. I was born in the 50s, 1951. I grew up in the 50s and the 60s. I grew up in a small farming community in Salinas Valley. My parents had immigrated from the Philippines to America. My dad first in the 1930s. He served in the military. At that time, he couldn't join the U.S. Army. So they created the 1st and 2nd Filipino Regiment, which my dad joined. And he fought in the war. After the war, he met my mom. My mom was 16 years old when she got married. She came from the Philippines and by herself on a boat. At that time, my dad had already come back from the war. Like I said, I grew up in a small farming community. It was predominantly Mexican. There was maybe 2 or 3 Filipino families in the town that I was born. I left the area in the late 60s. And if you recall from some of your history books in the 1960s, it was an era of all this political turmoil. You had the free speech movement in Berkeley, you had the start of the Vietnam War, you had the assassinations of Robert Kennedy, of Malcolm X, of all of these folks. So you have all this political turmoil happening in the country. So I left this small conservative town, and I came to Cal State Hayward in the 70s. And when I came here in 1970, this was predominantly a community, a commuter school. There was only one dorm here, Carlos B, and I lived in that dorm. So none of these dorms were here then. When I walked around campus, I hardly saw any Filipinos. And the ones that I did see, we would kind of wave at each other and just kind of acknowledge each other. But there was no Filipino organization here in the 70s. There was one created in 1968. It was called FASA with an F. And that came about because some of you may have seen read in maybe your history books, in 1968, there was a student strike at San Francisco State. And that was the start of ethnic studies. So a group of Filipinos from here went to that strike and said, well, we're going to go back to campus and we're going to start our own Filipino club and we're going to fight for ethnic studies. This was 1968. By the time I got here in 1971, the FASA no longer existed. When I came here, I thought, why isn't there a Filipino organization here? There was a black student union, there was an Asian student union, there was all these student groups, but not Filipinos. And I couldn't understand that. So that's the context of why PACC began. But more importantly, it began for me because you guys are all, from Filipino families, and it's family. family comes first. I'm gonna get emotional here. So when I first came here on campus, I was 20 years old. First time I'd ever been away from home. And I remember as I was packing my car, my dad said to me, if you're ever in trouble, look for another Filipino. And I remembered that. So anyway, one of the reasons why we started PACC was to create kind of like this family group, support group. When we first started, there were maybe 15, 20 of us. And the support and encouragement that we gave to each other substituted for the families back home. And I am so proud to see that core value that we try to instill in terms of family and helping each other is still here. And it's growing, and I am so proud to have been a part of that. Hopefully you could understand that as I'm trying to explain to you why PACC, at least from my perspective, began.
Were you about to say something else? Okay, so now, why is having a voice important to speak out for your community?
That's when we first started PACC, like I said, there were very few Filipinos here on campus, and we tried to recruit folks to join the organization. And I remember sitting down at my kitchen table and trying to write an editorial to the Pioneer newspaper here. And I think you can probably still find it. I have a copy of the editorial that I wrote, but the crux of it was that Filipinos didn't have a voice in the classes that we took, the instructors that were teaching us. We didn't have a say in terms of or voicing our opinions to the legislators. At the time, also, back in the early 70s, Marcos was the president of the Philippines. He didn't declare martial law until, I think it was 1975. But a lot of the stuff that was happening, happened in the early 70s. And even though I was born here, a lot of our members were born in the Philippines. They had family in the Philippines. And the effects of pre-martial law was affecting them and their families. So at the time, it was important for us as a student organization to not only talk about what's happening here, Hayward, California, but in the Philippines. Just to let people know in the Philippines that you're being supported, and the importance of having that voice is critical, because if you don't speak up, if you don't participate, then things are going to happen around you that you don't have any control over or you didn't participate in. And that's why it's important to have a voice. As all of you know, there's going to be an election in November. And no matter what political side you are, doesn't matter, vote. You have to have a voice. And when I saw the title of this, today's series, I thought, wow, that really is an interesting title that you've chosen, especially for where we are in this country in terms of the craziness that's going on. You wouldn't think back when I was on campus, we had even before I was on campus, the whole women's rights movement, the gay rights movement, all of that is in jeopardy now. The whole thing about abortions, all of that is in jeopardy now. And if you don't speak up, if you don't approach your legislators and tell them how you feel, things are going to happen without you controlling. You cannot go back and say, well, it happened. You got to participate. You have to speak your mind.
Yeah, shout out to the couples who came up with the name. I came in on this event at the last minute.
Shout out to Ray.
Shout out to Ray! All right, so our third question is, what keeps you coming back here? What keeps you coming back to Boston?
Like I said, I have so many wonderful memories of this campus. When I first came here in the 70s, a lot of these buildings weren't here. But, I grew up here. I was 20 years old. I met my best friends here. I met my wife here. I proposed to her here. That's why when I come to this campus, flood of memories come back. Good memories. And the other obvious part of it is to see you guys. I have never, it's hard for me to believe that at one point I was your age. That was 50 some odd years ago. And to see your energy, your enthusiasm, it makes me feel more alive. And it makes me feel that despite what's happening in the world, there is hope. And you guys are that hope. So I'm counting on you to don't let me down. You guys got to take care of me. I'm becoming a senior citizen here. So that's what brings me back to this campus. It's primarily you guys and the energy that you have.
We have no tissues in case.
What's tissues?
Yeah. This is a very emotional moment.
Give him a second, they're all crying.
We took like a 5-minute break for all the crying too low.
Maybe give him like 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
Oh my God.
What we're doing all together as one is the unity clap, as known as Isang, which is one down. If we are gonna rise, if one person falls in our community, we follow them too, because if we're gonna use our voice, use your voice as we're falling in with our voice as well. So how Isang is gonna happen is that we're gonna be clapping slowly until our energy gets louder and louder as we go fast. And I'm gonna start out with Isang, which is one clap. Dalawa baksak, that's 2 claps, and you know the rest. So let's start. Ready? Y'all ready? Yeah. Follow slow. Yes, we can now take our photo.
Pangalang ko sa habang buhay, makapiling ka, makasama ka, Yan ang panalangin